is coming soon. Good morning, guys, and thank you once again for joining us for YMM Youth Ministry Minute Message. Brother Kraft, as always, thanking you for this opportunity, thanking God for this opportunity for just allowing me, a little old sheep like myself, to bring God's holy and divine word. And I just thank you guys so much. Last week, we introduced a new characteristic or name of God, and I asked you guys to do something a little different, to read a passage of scripture, comment in the book of Psalms, chapter 23, and then comment on kind of what stood out or what stuck out to you as far as the role of a shepherd, right? And many of you guys did an amazing job. I thank you so much for chiming in and doing that for me. Like I said, I know it's a little something different, but I thank you for doing that. Still waiting on a couple of people who didn't do it. We want to encourage as many people as possible because we're at the end of this COVID thing, so we're going to be transitioning back soon, prayerfully, God willing. And we want to make sure that everybody is still on the same page and still up to speed and still have their relationship with God intact, right? So I just want to encourage you guys, youth, to continue to post those things on Youth Me and continue to just chime in and be a part of our Youth Me messages, right? Let's get back to it, because I told you last week that I might have to come back to this name we talked about last week. We've been over 5 so far. Yahweh Yireh, which is God a provider. El Roi, the one who sees me, the God who sees me. Aya, which was the great I am. Then we talked about Abba Father, which we know is like a dear, endearing term, but also one that you had to, that signified you were going to obey. All right. Then we talked about Jehovah Shalom, God of peace. Jehovah Ra is the one we talked about last week. God is my shepherd, right? So we're going to continue with that one because, like I said, it was real full. There's a lot of information in it, and I just loved breaking down that shepherd piece, and I want you to try to see it in a new light, right? So let's get started. Let's get back to it. Let's get to our memory verse. We can't get started without our memory verse, coming in Exodus chapter 3, verses 13 and 14. And we know it says, but Moses protested, if I go to the people and tell them the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they will ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? God replied to Moses, I am who I am. That's Aya. Say this to the people of Israel. I am him who sent you. All right. So there we go. We're finding that we're still studying these names. And again, I wanted to get back to it. I wanted to get back to the last one we introduced last week, Jehovah Ra, right? The God is my shepherd. All right. And as I mentioned, the shepherd was one who took care of the sheep and the livestock, right? He spent time with them. He kind of got a chance to understand them and then protect them, made them feel secure, and really gave them what they needed, right? So he had a huge role, right? That the shepherd had. And I said a whole lot there because I need you to look at it from the sense of Jesus doing that for us, right? He does the same thing for us. So again, the shepherd's job was supremely important. All right. We talked about last week about what he does and why he does it, or where he does it. Today we're going to look at why a shepherd's job was so important. All right. I think this is very important. And I'm going to try to tie it all up, and we're going to end it today, okay, with this name, Jehovah Ra. But first, it was important because I need you to understand that first and foremost, the job of a shepherd was not a widely sought out job. Now, I know I talked about he had all these responsibilities, but even with that, the job was kind of low on the totem pole. Didn't too many people want to be a shepherd, right? It was reserved for what people considered the lowest of the low, right? That's why David, the baby boy of the family of Jesse, you can read that in 1 Samuel chapter 17, around about verse 15 and 20, where it says that he was the youngest of the sons, and he was the one who helped his father with the sheep. So he was the family shepherd, right? So when David writes Psalms 23, he would have had firsthand knowledge of the responsibility it took of being a shepherd, right? And to relate that to his love for God, that's why he wrote that psalm and many others, because David had so much time on his hands, all right, and then developed a great relationship with God because he was a shepherd, right? So again, in that society, remember I told you about last week, the livestock and the sheep that the shepherd cared for was like their money, all right, was like the family's money, right? The more you had, the wealthier you were considered. So it was important, for one, the shepherd not to lose any of the sheep or the livestock. That's super important, right? For he kept the owner and the family wealthy. And then for two, if at all possible, gain some sheep or make them feel comfortable enough where they would multiply and not subtract. All right. So that was the purpose of the shepherd, right? Now, with that, I need you to see that in order not to lose sheep, this is very important, not to lose sheep, you would have to have, get this, a sacrificial love for the sheep or the livestock that you cared for. Wow, you wouldn't just let anyone just come in and take your sheep or your livestock that you were entrusted with because, it represented your family's wealth, right? So you had to be able to protect it. You probably had to be a tough guy or a tough cookie to do this, right? Because you had to be, David even talks about fighting wolves and lions and bears and all those things. And he had to sacrifice himself for those animals. That's deep. All right. That's deep. He had to be ready to do all these things. All right. If you don't understand that, okay, you're hearing it from me, but I want you to hear from Jesus. All right. How about that? John chapter 10, verse 11 through 15. Jesus says it like this. Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. A hired hand will run when he sees a wolf coming. He will abandon the sheep because they don't belong to him and he isn't their shepherd. And so the wolf attacks them and scatters the flock. The hired hand runs away because he's working only for the money and doesn't really care about the sheep. Verse 14, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. I know my own sheep and they know me. Just as my Father knows me and I know the Father. So I sacrifice my life for the sheep. Wow. Jesus wraps it all up. He says he's our shepherd and he sacrifices his life, or he sacrificed his life for us. We know that he did it on the cross to protect us and to redeem us back to his Father. That's amazing how this Jehovah Ra title is just coming together, right? Now, get this too. A shepherd's job was really lonely and secluded. Remember, I talked about that from the beginning. Probably why David was able to write and have this relationship with God and write the many psalms that he did, because he was always with the sheep, right? Now, remember, I talked about multiplying them and growing them. He had to take them from pasture to pasture, or green area to green area, in order to keep them safe and secure and full and filling with nutrients, right? It would only be the shepherd and the sheep. Could you imagine that? Being just out there by yourself. Maybe David was probably at this time, maybe 15, 16 years old. And he was just out there with the sheep all the time, just him and the sheep. All right. As a matter of fact, I did a little research on this and found out that still today in parts of Africa, in the South Sudan, and I got to be honest, I've been infatuated with Africa and trying to visit and maybe even going back, right? That they still have shepherds today that keep cattle and have to take care of the cattle and take them to great lengths, all right, far distances for these cattle to be able to graze and feel comfortable, right? And they prove the point I've been making here today, that the cattle is used as money and bargaining chips, even today in the South Sudan. Like they say they only eat the cattle if it's sick or if it died, right? That's the only time they eat the cattle, because the cattle are their money and their wealth. It even said that the cattle are used as bargaining chips and trading, bartering things, even for marriage. When a guy wants to marry a wife, it's called a dowry because he has to pay the family to marry the wife. He does it in cattle. Wow. That lets us know that what the Bible is saying is still relevant today, right? That's why David writes in Psalms 23, he maketh me to lie down in green pasture. He leadeth me beside the still water. That to me was the most important verse. Remember, I asked you to do it on Group Me, but that was my most important verse in that passage, right? Because just to know, get this, that I have a shepherd in my life that will not only lead me to green pasture and lead me beside the still water, but he will make me lie down. I hope you didn't miss that, young people. He make me lie down. And the green pasture and the still water, they signifies like the peace that we have, or even the prosperity that we may endure. And just to know that God will make me lie down, because many times, if you're honest, we'll get to those stages in our lives, or points in our life where we're making good grades and got friends galore and popular on Instagram and TikTok and things like that. And we'll forget that we are at a peaceful place, and we'll just run through and not even recognize it. And God has to say, hey, wait. Settle down. Relax in this state right now. It's not going to last always. Relax. I love that passage because he makes me lie down. He makes me understand that where I am and where he has me is an opportunity to rest and be at peace. All right. So I encourage you with that. Okay. So here's a clear picture. I know we're talking about sheep and shepherd and things like that. And we're in 2021. And some of you guys may be like, Brother Kraft, what you talking about? Okay. So here's a clear picture. The parents you have in your life are like your earthly shepherds. Wow. Your parents are like your earthly shepherds. Their role is everything that we mentioned, right? Think about it. They guide you, they protect you, they feed you, they nourish you, they clothe you, they do all these things for you, and they even sacrifice for you. Do you see what I'm saying? Like your parents' responsibility, God put them there, is to take care of what you need. God gave them to you. All right. Parents are something not given the respect they deserve, just like a shepherd. Sometimes not given the respect they deserve, like a shepherd, but their responsibility is enormous. I can say our responsibility is enormous because I'm a parent too, right? I was just talking to my wife about this the other day, about this very thing. About we have a son who's about to graduate, right, in another year, and just to review the shepherd's role and impact in his life, just made it real to me. Like I just pray to God that we've been doing everything we can do, because as he gets ready to transition from being under our roof to possibly going to college or possibly going wherever he may go to the armed forces, whatever the case may be, have we prepared him? All right. So that's a daunting task. And that's why I think it's important to look at this title of God, Jehovah Ra, right? Now, how would it look to walk away, right, from the goodness, all the blessings, all the protection, all of the gifts, all of the clothes? How would it feel to just walk away from all of those things because you were led astray or didn't get what you wanted? All right? Think about it. We are just like sheep to our parents. We think we know best, but God placed them in our lives because they will prepare you for things that you don't even see coming. Wow. God does the same thing for us. We don't see things coming. Remember, I told you that we're like sheep. We just be going and think we know where we're going. As kids, you just think you know where you're going, but your parents have already seen it, already been there. So they're there to help shepherd your life. Jehovah Ra does the same thing for all believers through his Holy Spirit. I'm just so glad and thankful that we have this Jehovah Ra. And I'm thankful to David that he wrote it in the way that he did in Psalms 23. Makes it so plain and evident. He goes on to say that God protects me with his rod and staff. He makes a table before me in front of me in the presence of my enemy. He does all of these things. And if we just think about it and relate it to where we are today, you can see the Jehovah Ra inside of our lives today. All right. I'm so blessed and thankful that you took the time to be with me this morning. Prayerfully, you've heard and learned something about this Jehovah Ra characteristic of God inside of our lives. Our parents are like the shepherds of our lives. God, the Godhead, is the shepherd over our lives eternally, right? So now we got to focus on understanding the role and the enormous responsibility that we have as sheep and our parents have and God has in our lives. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope you got something from that. All right, group me. Gotta go. Gotta close. All right, I need you to do something else. I need you to read Matthew chapter 18, verses 12 through 14. All right, Matthew 18, 12 through 14. This is the parable of the lost sheep. And all through the Bible, the parables of sheep and shepherds are used throughout the Bible. I told you that. Here's another one. Matthew 18, 12 through 14. All right, after all we've talked about with Jehovah Ra, why do you think it's so important that the shepherd in this passage goes and gets the lost sheep? All right, think about that. Why do you think it's important that the shepherd went and got the lost sheep? All right, I want you to think about that. I want you to post your answer and group me. I love you so much. Pray for you got something out of this message. Continue to pray for me as I pray for you. I love you, Brother Kraft. Out. Jesus is coming soon.